Hey guys, how you doing today? I thought I would just show this little series that I'm going to start up of just little critiques and observations that I'm seeing. Um, I wanted to take a look at this guy's work, Con Win, uh, here on the Unreal Facebook. Actually, I'm going to take my headphones off. I thought it was actually looking pretty nice. Like, what I have to say is a very minor critique, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Um, that you have this great scene in Unreal. I mean, it looks really great. Until I noticed one thing that I thought would be an interesting dive into today. I saw this scene, and if it's coming up in the stream, I looked at this chair and I thought it was floating, especially back here. But even right here, it's still floating. There's also another culprit in this scene that I wanted to bring it to attention, um, and I thought we would take a look at this and why this is happening, why this area looks floating, and even some of this stuff is looking floating. Um, we all know about ambient occlusion, so there could be some ambient occlusion that we could take a look at. I've done a few little tests here. Um, that even down here you can see there's a very little ambient occlusion going on down there. So if I was to critique that right off the bat, I would say putting some darkening just down there would greatly help. Just adding just a tiny bit. That's probably way too much. But just something along those lines would increase it. I don't know. He's probably got this light here, and this is Unreal, so the lighting is probably can truncate it a little bit. Let's do a different layer. That he's not getting enough bounces, basically going in between here to cause that. So you might want to put in another light here, maybe just along this edge to bring in this shadow and make a little more shadow effect there. The other culprit I noticed was this chair felt floating right here. So I'm just going to mark that we need to add a little ambient down here. And maybe you want to check his light settings out for why my thing is so dark there. Let's go with a red. That he's definitely casting a light. Like that looks correct there. But he's not getting a lot of underneath shadowing, so you might want to just check that out. The other thing I wanted to notice here is why is this chair look like it's floating? Well, there's a couple reasons why it looks like it's floating. One, there is shadow detail there. I don't know if you can notice it. We're just going to bump the levels. You can see there is a little bit of shadowing going on, but it's not enough. At first, that was my only critique, is that he just needed more shadowing, maybe some more ambient occlusion going on, maybe a little bit of post effect, that maybe he's bumping up his shadows too light, that he's negating some of his really dark blacks that would just happen naturally. But then the other thing, I wanted to take a look at what's actually happening in reality. So I took a picture of my chair here. Now, in the real world, this is what's going on. I have a very strong light lamp coming in from over here, and then I have the sun and its rays coming all through here. And if you notice here, this black right here, that's all coming from this shadow, or I'm sorry, from this sunlight right here. Now then you have subsequent bounces that are contributing to all this extra area here. and then you got very tiny bit of ambient occlusion going on right there. So that's what's happening in reality. And some of the things we're not seeing quite enough of right there. The other thing is I want to take a look is if you look how dark this shadow is here, and if you notice I put these white little pieces of paper so then we could actually critique this a lot better than just putting it on brown floor. You can notice that this shadow, since we're closer to this light over here, this is getting more of this light, or this is getting more of this light, therefore we're getting a stronger shadow here, and the light coming over here is a lot less. There's not as much light going on right here, so that's why we're not getting as much of a shadow just here. We are still getting some, but you can see there's a definite, if we were just to look at this one area, this had the key from here. And the only reason we're getting this, you may say this is the key light in this area, but this is actually just more of a reflection that we're seeing right here, as this is more of a glossy plastic, especially these little round cube pieces. So just take a note of that. So I wanted to bring that to light of if he wanted to improve his thing, he could either opt in to make his light over here stronger, like, which might actually help in making this down here darker, like we said. So what I did, just to clarify that, is I just made a little layer and it kind of grounds out a little bit more. You would probably get a little bit more softening going on in the actual scene, but I just want to take a note of that. The other thing I want to take a look at, I started noticing that if I was to look at the value here, I wanted to see, and this is not super correct because we're not looking at true luminance here, but we're just looking at the final image, and that's really all I have to go through. But if we look, we have this level here, 91, and then if we pick over here, this is like 87. So these two things are basically the same. If we notice back to our reference image, even back here, this is actually a pretty cloudy day for me over here in Texas, and we're still getting a lot of extra light. And even these wood floors, they're not the shiniest wood floors in the world, but they are relatively shiny, and you can see the difference in the luminance between one and the other. So that's another thing I would take a note of, that either he may want to take that down, maybe you want to look at his luminance values to check if they're actually in PBR range. Hopefully this is not going over an 80% luminance value, but he may want to check that. Another thing he can take a look at too is brightening up this background. This is a little overdoing it, but something, you know, where we're actually, it's not looking like just a day the other. You know, I did a couple of little treatments on here, just trying different things out. Even if you wanted some of this, I know why people do this. You know, in reality, most things are probably going to look like that or something, but nobody wants to see that in their final images. But it's actually true what would actually happen in reality. The other thing we would get from having a brighter piece there, is, let's see, here, let's just make a new layer here. Oops. Some of this area right here. I'm trying to soften here. So when we would brighten this area up, yeah, let's say we just did something like that, but also like these areas here would get a little more light. You know, these areas right here would get a little more light going on to these pieces. This thing would get a little more light here. We'd probably get a little more light to show off the dimensionality of those pieces. And again, it would just go into adding a little more drama, a little more contrast between the different surfaces. Because he's got, even as nice as this thing is, he's still kind of got the same shades happening, and you're losing some of your facets. I think I might have, no, I didn't say he had a grayscale. I should have saved that. And this is pretty nitpicky. I mean, I really like these images that he came up with. I think Wynn did some really great stuff. But I think it could be punched up just a little bit. I think he's, if we had just a little more brightness going on some of these edges, it would just, give this just a little bit more refineness. Just want to see. See, he's got this. The only thing by looking at the detail lighting is it does take into effect all this reflection data, which can throw things off because reflection data and lighting that's actually being balanced is not the same. So I would be careful of these types of things. Just looking for little floating areas that's just happening because maybe you darkened up your skylight when in actuality your skylight is probably going to be brighter. Now, in the case of my room, if we get to the inside of the room, we have more stronger shadow here. So that's another thing he could do too. If he wanted to leave this, darker here, maybe brighten up these lights in here. Where's my layer? A little shadow layer. So let me put this back on multiply. And I'm just going to overdo it. But he would get some more darkening here, some of this would darken here. And again, just giving that a little more finesse. And I'm guessing, I'm almost 99% sure this is a ray tracing. So yeah, if you almost don't want to make your lighting the same brightness as what's coming in through the window and what's here interior, unless you really get stipulated by the client or something. I just thought it's a nice little piece to talk about. Just adding that extra little 5% that I think would touch this up a little more. But I hope you guys like this. I'll try to do a little more of these in the future.